going through storms and something swallows me whole, I ain't waiting until day 3 of all of the stuff that I'm going through. I'm not waiting. It says, no, he waited day 1, day 2, day 3, in the middle of the darkest moment of his life, and then he prayed. Can I ask you this morning, when will be your then? When will be your then? When will it finally happen in your life that you will say, you know what? Maybe I need to turn back to God. Maybe I've had enough of how my life is going through. Maybe after day 1, I realize it is so nasty up in this little container of this fish. Maybe then will be my win. Or maybe after day 2, maybe you're a slow learner like some of you may be, and you may say, you know what, day 1, maybe it'll get better after day 1. But if you're stuck in that fish after day 2, sometime or another you would say, now is my time to get things right with the Lord. But to go to day 3 in the middle of, I've watched Shark Week. I've seen what fish eat. I understand. I've been on boats where they begin to catch stuff or on the dock. I know what stuff smells like. I cannot even imagine being stuck in the middle of this fish for 3 days. Something in that place needs some Lysol. It needs some Fabuloso. It needs some purple stuff. It needs something, because I imagine the stench of what he was going through was amazing. Just how horrible that was. And yet some of us will spend day 1, day 2, and day 3 in the middle of all of your circumstances, all of your mess, all of the darkest places of your life, and then you still don't spend time getting things right with the Lord. This is amazing grace. This is the great love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. And you laid down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Welcome to Westside Emmanuel Baptist Church, the church that loves God and loves people. We're in the heart of Bogalusa with Bogalusa on our heart. We look forward to you joining us in person sometime soon as we worship the Lord together.
We had an amazing time. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to been able to go and spend some time with the little ones. They were amazing. They all got along. They just kept each other in the loop. No one ever was left out, ever. And that was amazing. Just to see that people who aren't always here was able to just bind together and just come and just be friends and just be able to worship together and everything.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain.
Never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. church all the time. He was there all the time. His family loved the Lord. His family were servants in the church. His family was there all the time. He knew about Jesus. He knew about the ways of the Lord. They were a giving family. He knew of the things of God. And then choices began to happen. And one choice after another choice after another choice, one drug after another drug after another drug, one time of rehab after another time of rehab after another time of rehab, one time of somebody rescuing him, one time of somebody grabbing him out of his misery, one time of somebody making sure that he doesn't get as much trouble as he should have because of the decisions that he had made. One choice after one choice, one decision after one decision, one event after one event, and everything began to just tumble in around him, but it never changed a thing until one day he got into an accident. When he got into an accident, there was no one there to come and rescue him anymore. No one visited him in the hospital. No one was there to call him. No one was there to answer any calls that he made. And then when he was there in his darkest place, in his darkest moment, after one wake-up call after another, after one hearing this thing and this warning signal going off in his life, finally, when no one was there and no one came, in the middle of his darkest moment is when the Lord grabbed a hold of his life. Every other storm did nothing at all, but the darkest moment of his life was the moment that he awakened to the very sound of the voice of God in his life. I have a feeling that this morning some of you can relate to that, because some of you have had storms that have happened in your life, and one thing has gotten worse, and one thing has gotten better, and things have been rescued, and things have gotten all right, but then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, you don't hear the warning signal until you are in your darkest moment of your life. Your family begins to crumble around you. Your children begin to move in directions and choices that they make that you begin to worry about. Your health begins to fail, and you begin to wonder what in the world is happening here. And all these storms and all of these things that are going on in your life, it seems like nothing ever matters until you get to the darkest moment of your life. Can I tell you this morning that your darkest burden could be your brightest blessing in your life? The very time that you go through the very most difficult time of your life, your biggest trouble could be your biggest test, could be your greatest testimony this morning of what God could do in your life. And we find that true in this book of Jonah. As you remember, the book of Jonah is a God's heart for runaways. People who are running away from God, who God, they know that God has a calling or a purpose for their life. God is saying something to them, but instead of listening to that voice of the Lord, they just begin to run and hide and try to get as far away from God as possible. So we have found in Jonah chapter 1, where the Lord called Jonah and said, look, I want you to go to Nineveh, but instead of traveling the 500 miles to the east, he goes 2,500 miles to the west. And he tries to get as far away from God's calling in his life as possible. And so Jonah chapter 1 verse 17 is where we begin to find it in your word. If you would stand with us and honor the Lord in his word. Jonah chapter 1 starting in verse 17. The Bible says these words, now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And then chapter 2 verse 1 says these words, then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the fish's belly. Father, I just pray this morning in this time that we have together, Lord, that you would speak life, that you would speak healing, and in those of us who may be in some of the darkest places of our life, some of the loneliest places in our marriages, some of the most distraught places with our kids, and some of the most desperate times as we're looking towards our health or our future or the things to come, that God, you would show us this morning in the belly of the whale of our circumstances. And today you would speak life even in those dark places. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Go ahead and be seated. I have this thing in my car. I don't know, some of you who are more mechanically inclined than myself. It is a thing called a warning light. And I've got this little thing that's it looks like a little engine on one part, and then I got another one up top. Anybody have one of those in your car? Now, I don't know why, but mine malfunctions all the time because mine seems to be on constantly. I don't know why, but I looked it up. It's got a little gas light on one, and it's got another thing on the other side. And supposedly it says my gas cap is open, but I know my gas cap isn't open. But what it is that there's some kind of an O2 sensor thing or whatever. I don't think it matters a whole lot because I've been able to drive another. I think I got 240,000 miles. I've driven like thousands of miles on that thing. It hadn't hurt anything yet. And so so what's the big problem? That warning signal though, for those of you, and I saw the looks that you gave me. Well, preacher, that warning sign is actually on there for a reason and stuff. They don't just put those on there for no reason. I understand that you're saying that, but I wonder if some of you have had warning signals in your life and you've done just like I have. You've looked it up, you've kind of seen that it doesn't really matter, and then you just let it pass on by. Now I know I'm going to eat my words because one day when that little caution light, that little sensor comes on, then some of y'all are going to be like, preacher, we told you a long time ago you should have gotten that taken care of. I understand that, but yet we do that in our own lives, don't we? Where God gives us warning signs, He gives us storms, He gives us times in our life that we should have paid attention to, we should have listened, we should have known. God is saying something to us in this time. God is warning us. There's a flashing light that's going off in your life, into your job, in your family, in your future. You get all these little flashing lights and we just ignore every single one of them. That is what happened with Jonah. But in the middle of that time where Jonah had gone through all that trial, all the storms, all those warning lights that had come up in his life, even being thrown into the middle of the sea, we now find him in one of the most desperate places of his life. Most desperate place, and you notice there in chapter 1, verse 17, it says, "Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah." You know what this couple of weeks has been, right? You know the next couple of weeks will be as well. Anybody here have Discovery Channel? But you know what it is right now. I mean, as a Hawaiian, it's like our national holiday because it is Shark Week, right? And so, we have experienced all of the sharks and people eating stuff, and it's been a great time watching Discovery Channel because you're in the middle of Shark Week. Now, when you hear this little story about a great fish that swallowed Jonah, now the whole point of Jonah is not this fish. It is not a whale shark. It is not some kind of huge fish. That is not the whole important part of the story. The important part of the story is that God had prepared a fish to swallow him. And that preparation of that fish was not his destruction. It was actually his salvation. That huge fish that swallowed him in the very darkest moment of his life was not actually his destruction. It was his salvation. God had prepared this fish for his rescue. He prepared him. Why? Because Jonah is a slow learner. How many days and nights did Jonah spend in that fish? 3. Now listen. He spent 3 days in this fish, and then all of a sudden, chapter 2, verse 1 says, "Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God." Now, if I'm going through storms and something swallows me whole, I ain't waiting until day 3 of all of the stuff that I'm going through. I'm not waiting. It says, no, he waited day 1, day 2, day 3, in the middle of the darkest moment of his life, and then he prayed. Can I ask you this morning, when will be your then? When will be your then? When will it finally happen in your life that you will say, you know what? Maybe I need to turn back to God. Maybe I've had enough of how my life is going through. Maybe after day 1, I realize it is so nasty up in this little container of this fish. Maybe then will be my win. Or maybe after day 2, maybe you're a slow learner like some of you may be, and you may say, you know what, day 1, maybe it'll get better after day 1. But if you're stuck in that fish after day 2, sometime or another you would say, now is my time to get things right with the Lord. But to go to day 3, in the middle of, I've watched Shark Week. I've seen what fish eat. I understand. I've been on boats where they begin to catch stuff or on the dock. I know what stuff smells like. I cannot even imagine being stuck in the middle of this fish for 3 days. Something in that place needs some Lysol. It needs some Fabuloso. It needs some purple stuff. It needs something, because I imagine the stench of what he was going through was amazing. Just how horrible that was. And yet some of us will spend day 1, day 2, and day 3 in the middle of all of your circumstances, all of your mess, all of the darkest places of your life, and then you still don't spend time getting things right with the Lord. And the Bible says, look, after day 3, then Jonah finally prayed to the Lord from the fish's belly, and he cried. And look what the Bible says in chapter 2, verse 2. It says, and he cried, he began to pray to the Lord, out to the Lord because of my affliction. And what did the Lord do? And he answered me. Verse 2 says, out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. Here's some lanyard for you. You may think that you are so far away from God that in the middle of your darkest moment, in the middle of your affliction, in the middle of your Sheol, some of your versions may even say in the middle of hell, he cried out. And I don't know how bad some of the things are in your life, and I don't know how hellish it may seem, and how hopeless it may seem, and how dark it may seem, and how just desperate it may seem. But here the Bible says, yes, you know what? That this guy cried out to the Lord in the middle of his affliction, and God answered him. Can I tell you, sometimes you need to just begin to say, you know what, I know I'm not where I need to be. I know I'm probably further away from the Lord than ever. I know it just seems as dark and desperate and hopeless as it can be. But in the middle, don't you dare say, oh, I can't call on God. I'm too far away from God. I'm too far gone. You are never. His arm is not too short to save you in the middle of those things. And he desperately wants you to cry out to him. To call out to the amazing, mighty, precious God, to just call out, and not just call out, but to just even cry out of the belly of Sheol, in the middle of my darkest moment, I cried out to the Lord. Oh, if Jonah can do it in the middle of his darkest moment, so can you and I, because he realized something in verse 3. It says, for you, the Lord, and this is what happens in your life, for you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surround me, and your billows and your waves pass about me. Who sent Jonah in the middle of that place of darkness? It was for you, that thou art the one that sent me in the middle of this place. Can I tell you? Sometimes we want to blame the devil. Sometimes we want to blame other folks. Sometimes we want to blame everybody else for the darkness that we're going through. Can I tell you, sometimes God will send you into the middle of that darkest moment. He will allow the darkest moment of your life to happen. Not because it's a happy place to live, but it is a great place to learn. In the middle of your darkest moment, that is the great place to learn, to listen, to love, to begin to realize that I need a Savior. It is not fun to live there. Because some of you know what it's like to live there in your family, in your environment, in the things that you're going through. It is not nice to live there. But if you take a moment, you just let God teach you some stuff to learn in the middle of those things. You see, here, he was learning some things, that it was God who allowed those things to happen. But here is the hope of this passage. Chapter 2, verse 4, it says, then I said, I've been cast out of your sight, out of thy sight, yet I will look again towards your holy temple. You know what's beautiful about the book of Jonah? It is our memory verse. Do you remember what our memory verse says? And then the Lord called out to Jonah, what? A second time. A new beginning. And here he says, look, you know what? I will look again. That word again, the second time. I will come back to the Lord after as many times have I strayed away, yet I will look again towards your holy temple. Listen, friends, there is always a day for a new beginning in your life. There's never a moment that you say, no, I can't look back to God's temple. I can't go back to the Lord. I can't get things right with the Lord. I just gone too far. I messed up too many times. It's impossible for me to get things right with God. Yet I will look again. This runaway prophet, that God had a heart for runaways. Even this guy, he ran away, but the Lord still said, I'll look again towards your holy temple. Jonah, in the middle of this learning experience, the darkest moment of his life, he said, yet I will look again. And then he gives a testimony of what happened to him. Verse 5, the waters surrounded me even to my soul. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the moorings of the mountains. The earth with its bars closed behind me forever. But then look what it says in verse 6. In verse 6 it says, yet you have brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. You ever been in a dark place? I mean, in a pit of a place. Coach, I know everything's perfect in your life and stuff, so you've never had to experience, pits in your life and stuff. Isn't that right? I mean, that's not like the Stevens way is to have a perfect life. Or I know that, the Warners have never had any kind of difficult times, any kind of hardships in your life and stuff. And the Jenkins, they've always had a perfect life. Brandy, I'm sure that everything's always been hunky-dory and just perfect in your life as well. Some of you have no idea what it means to be in the middle of a pit. But then there's some of us who could testify, I know what it's like to be in a dark, lonely, desperate kind of pit. Can I get an amen? Amen? Okay. But, y'all look beautiful and perfect this morning, but I have a feeling that there are some pits that you and I have gone through, some experiences that we have faced, some things even in your life right now that are just seeming like, that the weeds of everything is wrapped around me, that the life of me is being choked out. And so some of you understand what it's like to have this pit that you go through. And the Bible says, even though he went through all of this stuff, yet, oh God, you have brought up my life from the pit, oh Lord my God. There is only one Savior for your life. There is only one who you can go to for hope in your life. There's only one answer in your life. Verse 7 says, when my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer went up to you into your holy, holy temple. When my soul fainted, when everything around me was crashing in, when there was no hope and no light and no reason to continue, then I found my hope. I remembered my God. Woo! Some of us have forgotten Jesus. Because in the middle of your worry, your doubt, your pain, in the middle of everything that you go through, you have gone to a whole lot of different places to find hope and peace and life and joy and just if I can just get through this job without just kicking somebody, if I can make that final shot, if I can just get over this thing, if I can just go through my life and just get there, if I can just move and roll like those guys did last week, if I just get past this, if I can just move on, if I can just find enough strength inside of me, if I can just get and work all this stuff out, if I can just do that, it'll be better. And your answer is not found in you. It's not found in them. It's not found in this or that. Your answer is truly found. When your soul faints, when you have, in the middle of your pit, it says, I remembered the Lord. Oh, some of us have amnesia. Some of us have old timers. Some of us have Alzheimer's. The worst kind of thing that you could ever have is when you just forget your God. Amen. And you've done that. I have done that. Oh, I just lose trust in the Lord when I ought to just fully rely on Him, but I forget how good He's been. Oh, I get worried about this thing and that thing and school and jobs and future and everything. And I just say, God, I don't know how to solve this and fix this. And I forget the greatness of my God. And here He says, no, I remember the Lord, and my prayer went up into your holy temple. And I close with this. Verse 9 says, but I will. Everybody else may not do this, but one thing I will do is I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay what I have vowed, verse 9 says, and salvation is of the Lord. 3 days into this bad boy, 3 days of experiencing his own Shark Week. 3 days of being swallowed by a great fish that God had prepared as his tutor, as his school, as the very darkest moment. 3 days down in there, and then he finally prayed. You keep messing around, and that 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, and I guarantee you just keep letting it slide, your marriage will be in the bottom of a pit because you let 3 days go by. I guarantee you stop praying for your kids, you start saying, you know what, it's just too much for them to handle, it's just too much stuff. You let 1 day, 2 day, 3 days go by, and I guarantee you'll end up losing your children. You're wondering where in the world did they end up at in the bottom of a pit. I guarantee you, you think to yourself, you know what, I can run away from God this step, and then I can take another day of another step away from God, and I can take another day away from the Lord. You know, people don't just end up not going to church. They do it one little day at a time, one little step at a time, one little step away from the Lord, and before you know it, there's no relationship with you and the Lord, and then, you know what, you grow up to have no relationship with your kids and the Lord, and then your kids don't end up going to church, and you wonder, why did my kids not go to church? Because of one little day and one little moment, and those 3 days end up to where, you know what, you didn't handle those 3 days, you didn't wake up, you didn't have a then and a when moment in your life, and then you look at your life and you say, how in the world am I in the depths of the pit that I am in? Maybe it's because you didn't do as this guy did. He says, you know what, Lord, I get it. I didn't get the storm. I didn't get it when the waves were crashing in. I didn't get it when things were getting worse in my life. I didn't even get it when those guys threw me overboard to calm the storm. I didn't get it when I was sinking down and the weeds began to entangle my life. I didn't even get it when I was swallowed whole in the middle of drowning and my life was sinking down. I didn't even get it the second day when I was in the middle of darkness and I didn't even know how I could survive. I didn't even get it the third day, but then finally a day came when he said, then I prayed to the Lord, and now I will sacrifice, I will give you thanks for what you've done in my life, and I will pay what I have vowed. I will do what you want me to do. I surrender. That is not a good place to be because it hurts really bad. Is a place of surrender. When after all your fussing and fighting and running away from God and getting absolutely nowhere, to spend all that effort and energy to get away, and then he gets you right back where he wants you, and when he gets you right back where he wants you, all you can do is say, you know what, salvation belongs to God. I will do what you've called me to do. That is a tough time for a bunch of folks who are runaways. Blake, I heard you had a bigger bow than this, but they didn't trust me with that, and so they just gave me this little one. And they even took the tip off of it because they said, you know, if you try to be funny and stuff and pull it back and then you hit somebody with it, it could kill them and that would be bad. So I agreed. Agreed that would be bad because, you know, right now in my life, I ain't even going to try because I end up killing y'all and I don't want to do that. Native Americans had this thing in a certain tribe that when their boy turns 13, some of y'all remember what it was like to be 13. Some of y'all are 13. Some of you who are parents of younger children, when they turn 13 and their bodies change, it's a whole new world. And so 13, here they are. They take their boy and they blindfold him, cover his face in the middle of the night. And what they end up doing is they take that boy and then they go and they lead that boy out into the middle of nowhere, into the middle of a dense forest where they have no idea where they are. It is one of the darkest places of their life. They go and they leave that boy there. All during the night, in the middle of this darkness, they begin to hear these creaking sounds of branches beginning to break. And they begin to hear the sounds of animals in the distance or in their mind. It seems really, really close by. And the whole idea is, will this boy run away? Will he leave that place where they've left him, or will he just remain vigilant through the night in the middle of his darkest place? Will he just stay put in that place? So boy at 13 stays out there all night long, never been away from his home, never been away from his family, but he is now out there in the middle of this darkest moment of his life. And then the dawn begins to break, and sunlight begins to filter through these trees, and as he looks around after having a scary night, a night of just feeling all alone, he looks around him and he begins to see some of those branches that are nearby. He begins to see the glistening of the leaves that have fallen down from the trees at nighttime. He begins to look around him and sees the beauty of everything that once scared him to death. But as he looks to the side, he begins to notice a figure that he didn't realize was there all night long. And that figure is there, and he's got a bow in one hand and an arrow in another. and it is his Father. That in the middle of his darkest moment, that his Father is there keeping watch over everything that happens to his boy. And though this was a test for that boy to see if he would run, if he would stay, if he would remain vigilant in the darkest moment of his life, he did not know that at that time that he was always protected. He was always with someone. That his dad was right there on the side to save his boy if he should ever need it. Can I tell you? In your darkest moment, when you are swallowed up and you have no hope, and day 1 is past, no answer. And day 2 has went by, and it is still as dark as can be. Day 3 just seems like it is even lonelier. When will be your then? When will be in that darkest moment of your life that you just finally call out to the Lord and say, Lord, I need you. Lord, I want you in my life. You see, you may feel like you are all alone. And you may feel as though there is no hope in the middle of your darkest moment. You may feel as though there is no one you can call to who will understand all that you're going through. But if you look close enough, if you listen in the middle of your darkest moment, you will hear a rustling sound that is right beside you of one who is your greatest protector, who is, as that verse said, salvation belongs to the Lord. You will notice that there is one who has never left you nor forsaken you, and he is waiting for you to cry out to the Lord. Where can you run from his presence? Where can you flee from God Almighty? If you rise up to the heavens, he is there. If you make your bed in the depths, he is there. If you settle on the far side of the sea, even there, his right hand will guide you. His right hand will hold you fast. Quit running from God. Instead, what you do is that song said, why don't you run to him instead of running away? It worked for Jonah. It needs to work for you today as well. Would you bow your head for just a moment? So our heads are bowed as our eyes are closed. I wonder if in the stillness of this moment that you might listen for God. I wonder if in the stillness of this moment, in the darkest place of your life, maybe you've been through it, maybe you're going through it, or maybe your darkest moment it is to come. Don't wait 3 days to call on him. Don't wait for one more warning sign along your life, one more storm, one more tragedy, one more day of hopelessness to where you just realize, I can't do it on my own. Jonah could not get out of that whale, out of that fish, out of that experience until he got things right with the Lord. That was step 1. And then the next thing that happened, the Lord just spit him out on dry land. So this morning, would you just say, Lord, I remember you. I cry out to you. I call upon Lord yet again. One more time. I'm coming right back where I need to be. Father, I thank you.
Friends, thank you for joining us today at Westside Emmanuel Baptist Church, the church that loves God and loves people. We hope you'll be able to join us this coming Sunday at 10:30 a.m. or 6 o'clock in the evening time. Wednesdays at 6 o'clock for our prayer service, and we also have youth and children's activities as well. We look forward to seeing you. Hope to meet you in person here in Bogalusa with Bogalusa on our heart. We hope to see you soon.